Okay, this video is going to walk you through the tracking sheet for peer reviews in the Planetary Science Division. So first, let's go over some of the areas of the tracking sheet. At the top, you'll see an area where the program officers have listed their names and the initials that you'll see in the tracking sheet. The tracking sheet will have some information about the Google Meet information for the panel and dial-in information. There's a tracking sheet key which shows you the color code for tracking progress. Green is the color for signing off and says that something's ready for the next step. Blue means that the primary has returned some corrections to whoever made those initial comments. And red is whenever something is being sent back to the primary to work on. You'll also see that we've included some links to some relevant documents and a link to the panel folder. What's important to remember as you use the tracking sheet is that only you can turn your initials green or red. Once you go green, you'll stay green for the entire time that you're working in this tracking sheet. The primary can turn someone else's initials blue. That happens from blue to red when the primary is sending the review back to them. And what's important to know whenever something's in your inbox is that the primary should watch for red along the row of the proposal, and the individual should watch for their initials to turn blue. So with that summary, now let's jump in and watch a little bit of an example that I'll comment on so you can see how the tracking sheet works. So what you can see here is that whenever a proposal is discussed and voted on, we'll see it checked off. And as the primary begins working on it, you'll see the primary add their initials. So in this case, both proposals 1 and 2 have been started on by their primaries, and Lindsay has finished writing that initial evaluation, and that's ready to move on to the next step. So what we'll see now is we'll see the secondaries start to pick those up by adding their initials. And once the secondaries are ready with either comments or for things to move on to the next step, we'll see them change their colors. So for example, on proposal 1, you can see that Lindsay as a secondary has some comments that she wants the primary to work on. So this is the flag for Becky to pick proposal 1 back up and address Lindsay's comments. The same is true for proposal number 2. At this point, proposal number 2 is now ready to move on to additional secondaries, while proposal number 1 is still waiting for the primary to address the comments, which has now been done. As you can see, Lindsay's initials have been turned to blue by the primary. So we're still working through the proposals with the secondaries. The secondaries are turning themselves red as they have comments, and as the primaries address those comments, they turn them blue. And once the secondaries are happy with the comments and the way that the eval is, they can turn themselves green to move things along in the process. Once we get to a column where all of the primaries and secondaries are green, we'll have a proposal that is ready to move on to the chair. You'll see that there's a column here for a third secondary, which we don't have in this example, but many panels do have a third secondary that will need to sign off. Proposal number 1, since it has greens across the board for primaries and secondaries, is ready for the chair to pick up. The same is true for proposal number 2, and proposal number 3 is there as well. At this point, there's a little bit of a bottleneck, as all 3 of these proposals got to the chair around the same time, and the chair is going to have to provide comments on all of them. The chair, Delia, has sent back some comments to the primary on proposal number 2. So it would be prudent for Lindsay to pick that up, which she has, and has now responded to those comments, and it's ready for the chair to pick that proposal, that eval back up again. We'll continue to go back and forth between the chair and the primary, with the chair turning their initials red and the primary turning the chair's initials blue as they go back and forth with their comments. Once the chair is happy with the way that their comments have been addressed, the chair will turn themselves green. and the proposal evaluation can move on to the POs. This is the case for proposal number 1, which you can see has now been picked up by PO1 David Smith. The POs will work between themselves and the primary to send comments back and have the primary address them. So proposal 1 is ready for Becky to pick back up and address David's comments. Proposal number 2 is still working its way through the chair before it makes it to the POs. The POs and the primaries will go back and forth, with the primaries turning the PO's initials blue and the POs turning their initials red as they have comments. You can see that proposal number 1 is now ready for the second program officer to pick up, which they have. Mitch Schulte now has that, and will now iterate with the primary on that same eval. Proposal number 3 is also ready. The eval is ready for PO2 to pick that up as well. PO2 maybe was a little overwhelmed with the number of evals that was coming in, and so another program officer, Mary Wojtek, has stepped in and added her initials to sign off on that. That's totally fine for different POs to pick these up. We can see that all of the proposals have passed through PO1 and they are happy with the current version of the eval. PO2 is still iterating with the primary on all 3, and we can see that proposal number 1 is ready, has been signed off by all the people in the chain, and now we'll just hold tight on that until all of the proposals in this panel are finalized before we can step into the E&R review. Now that all the proposals are complete, we'll do the E&R review for all of the necessary panel evaluations. Once that's complete, the PO2 will move all of the files into the final folder, and the primary will double check it and check off the done checkbox.